I think we're missing a couple board members, but I believe they're on their way. So we're going to get started. I'm going to call the meeting to order for January 11th, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
What happened?
And do you want to? Sure.
Ready, begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome. I'm glad so many of you could make it this morning. We are going to start with roll call.
Ms. Snell?
Here.
Ms. Matoye?
Here.
Ms. Fleur?
Here.
Mr. Davenport? Ms. Franco?
Here.
Ms. Black? Ms. Yelsey?
Here.
Dr. Navarro?
Here.
Okay. I need someone to approve.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
The agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give the public an opportunity. I know some of you may have to go to work, so we're going to give the public the opportunity to comment before the presentation or after the presentation. If you can stay, it would be better to comment after because you'll have all the information and before we go into our discussions. So,
Madam President, perhaps I can give a little prelude
Okay.
so that those have some
Perfect.
background and some
Perfect.
context.
Okay.
First of all, I want to thank staff for all the work they've done over the last couple of weeks. A lot of in-depth research, and the consultants that they've worked with have provided a lot of information. Over my career, I've seen this happen. You know, we are, especially in today's society, we want to move so quickly and make decisions quickly and get things done quickly that sometimes it's better to take your time and do the conduct a complete analysis before making a decision. I think this is one of those situations where the desire to create a new environment for the aquatics program at our school is an important one, and everybody wants to get it done quickly. But by slowing down and taking some time, we've come to realize that we can get more for our money in this process. So I want to thank Mr. Holcomb and Mr. Marsh and their team and our consultants for providing us this opportunity. So slowing down was a good thing this time. And I'm looking forward to the information that will be presented in today's study session.
Me too. We're going to start with the presentations. There are some extra copies of the presentation over there. There'll be two presentations, so I know there's not enough for everyone in the room. Maybe you could get one to share, and so you can follow along. I'm going to ask that the board refrain from asking questions until the presentation is complete, unless it's a matter of clarification and you need to clarify something before they proceed. Fine. Okay. And so with that, I'm turning it over to Mr. Holcomb.
Thank you, President Snell. For the members of the audience who are looking for documents, we were fortunate that our consultant brought some extra copies of the cost estimate, which many of you have just picked up. The stack has just dwindled down to one. The one document of which there were no extras is the letter from our consultant regarding the reopening of the pool. I will make a copy available here and ask my assistant to make some copies. They'll be available for you in a little bit, okay? It is not at the moment on the website, but all of these will be made available to the public. So that document is also available to you. And the presentation could
And
be
here's two
available.
more. And I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
I said that people could speak before or after. Of the people whose cards that they put in cards, does anybody want to go now, or can they stay and talk after? Okay, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, President Snell. Good morning, board members, Dr. Navarro, cabinet, and guests. It's my pleasure to be here this morning to talk about this project. Very quickly, we'll talk through our agenda for this morning. This is all in the actual board agenda that was published that you see, but just to review it for us all, the first thing that we'll talk about this morning is the existing Estancia High School pool and the options for reopening that pool. The second item we will talk about this morning are the costs and phases to take the Estancia High School pool from where it is to equity with the other 3 high school pools. And historically, our other high school pools have been done in phases. We will talk about that here this morning and what the costs and those phases would be. Typically, the first part of upgrading our aquatic centers involves replacing the pool itself, replacing the pool with a 50-meter pool. So we could call that phase 1. Phase 2, and each school has been a little bit different, but phase 2 involves a lot of other aquatic center improvements, most notably the team room, which was not part of the project that was designed previously, and which our other high schools do have for their aquatics program is a team room. And then lastly, the thing that comes at the end of all of these projects has been shade structures at each one of the schools. The third thing then we'll talk about is funding options. So you'll have the options to talk about the costs and the phases and what would be necessary to do those. And we will talk with you about some of the funding options to support that. Our objective at the end of this meeting is to ask you to give us direction to proceed with a specific option or whatever it is that you amend or tell us, here's another option we'd like you to consider or to go forward with that. Or if we don't quite have it all done today, to tell us, please go back and explore these further options, which you did at your last meeting very well, and we're better for it today. So thank you for that. Today, I'll introduce you to someone that you have not met, was not at our last meeting. It's the gentleman sitting here to my right, Ken Moeller, in the second chair. Ken is the president of ArcPac, which is an architectural firm that specializes in pools. He is very experienced with the district. In fact, he's worked on all 4 of our pools at our high schools, including he was the architect who led the refurbishment of the Estancia High School pool in 2006, which is the last time that pool was refurbished. To give you a sense, for a plaster pool such as that, 10 years is about the time when it's time to refurbish again. So we're right on track for that particular project. It's time. He inspected the pool on 12/22. So after the meeting, I contacted Mr. Moeller, asked him if he would give us his professional recommendation regarding options to reopen the pool and the costs thereof. He went out on the 22nd of December and did that. And you have a letter in front of you, and for members of the public who are interested in it, my assistant can get you a copy. A letter from Mr. Moeller that says that the pool could be reopened for 1 year's use for approximately $100,000. So you see that in the letter. There's an approach to how that would take place. Rather than going through all of that in detail, I thought, let's try to keep, this is very complicated. I'll try to get through the whole thing and let you come back and ask questions. That's why Mr. Moeller is up here at one of our tables with a microphone so that you can directly ask him questions about it. We looked at how long it would take to get the pool, to get all of that work done, about 2 months. So from the time you tell us to go ahead, we believe that we can have students back in the water in about 2 months from that time. So this basically summarizes what our options are and the costs are for the existing pool at Estancia. Now let's go to the second item on our agenda, which is to talk about the ultimate plan, the build-out plan to bring Estancia High School to equity in their aquatics program to our other high schools. First, let's talk about costs. The existing project as designed had a budget of $7 million. The scope of that was kind of somewhere in between just the 50-meter pool and all of the things except the shade structure that we have at our other schools. There are a few other components in there, but most importantly, and one of the larger pieces of that is there is no team room in the existing scope. That was estimated to be within our $7 million budget in August, right before we went out for bids in September. But unfortunately, when the bids came in, which are what we in the industry call hard bids, contract goes out, everybody in the universe who has a contractor's license that qualifies for this can bid it, and it's awarded to the lowest price. They all bid it, but those bids were all $3 million over our budget. With such a small budget, you can see that's very significant. Basically, that's about $10 million this total project would cost the district. So we brought in Alan Campbell, who's sitting exactly to my right, who was here at your meeting in December on the 14th. He is a chartered surveyor from the UK. In the United Kingdom, they do estimating and construction a little bit differently, and it's a very high professional designation in the UK to be a chartered surveyor. It means you know scope and costs like nobody else does. He's the managing director of Cumming, and he gave us this presentation, and what he said on the 14th was that that existing design that was bid, actually for $10 million, we could have also gotten the team room and our locker rooms upgraded, et cetera, which kind of told us, yeah, you're right, those bids were too high, and you can get more for your money. So we all talked about it, and you gave us direction to do some investigation. That's why we're back here today. Well, you have a new estimate in front of you from him, dated today's date. And on page 7 of that estimate, you'll see a table that lists different options. It says page 5, I'm sorry. On page 5, you'll see it talks about the original project scope. Then it talks about A, B, and C. So you see original project scope is $9+ million. That's what I just described a moment ago, which was the original project, plus updating the team room, et cetera, that he presented to us on 12/14. It says 12/16 in the report, 12/14. He kind of updated a couple of things in it in those 2 days. But that's basically the same, about $9 million. We could do all of the scope that's in the existing DSA-approved drawings, plus do some remodeling of the existing locker rooms to create a team room and some other things for about $10 million. One of the things you see in that, if you go to the far right, is that there's an item called option C, and he gave us that because of if we just want to do in our phasing the pool, and the things we have to do with the pool, like the out-on-deck showers and make sure we upgrade a bathroom and those things. If we really are limited to budget, if you say $7 million, Tim, is all we're putting into the school at this moment on our plan toward equity, then we can do it. That's what Alan's telling us. We can do the pool, and we can do the things necessary for the pool within our current budget. You don't need to add anything in additional budget to be able to get the school a pool. That's wonderful news. Yeah. One of the things across the top is you see that the pool itself is about $3 million, and then there's the things that go along with it. So that's one part of the news. But let's also talk about the other options you asked us for. So on our road toward eventual equity to other schools in costs, there's also option A. Option A says if we do everything now except the shade structures, team room, we upgrade the locker rooms to get us the team room and those types of things, we upgrade the coach's office, et cetera, that's $8.4 million. The other option is option B, and that is we do the pool, and then we say how much is it going to cost to do the other things 3 years from now, 5 years from now, some other time. And he's put together that cost for you as well. And he said, right now, that's $9.1 million to do it that way. That's option B. All of these options, keep in mind that just because shade structures have always kind of been the extra thing, we hit our grand total right before that. If you want the grand total including shade structures, add $250,000 to all of these numbers, okay?
Okay.
Now, as you look at this, as I said, this is very complex stuff. And you can look and say, well, am I really comparing apples in option A to apples in option C? And I see that there's a couple of differences. Some of them say design bid build, some of them say design build. One says Murtha pool. How do I know how to compare all of these? And the answer is there are permutations that would have made a sheet that would have gone out like this, that Alan could have done for us of all of that. He's tried to approach the main options. We still have the options to consider those permutations. I want to walk you through that so you can understand the pros and the cons to the district of either of those two permutations, and then we can answer your questions about it. The first one is the issue of a commodity versus a sole source. This estimate that he's put together for you, he will tell you as a licensed quantity surveyor that accuracy in budgeting and estimating is highest in commodities and lowest in sole sourced items. Well, that makes sense to us, right? Pretty much makes general sense to us. You know, when he says, this is my number, when we say shotcrete, he's gonna say, I can tell you that's bought every day, it's basically a commodity, and those prices are gonna be that way. They don't, there's no way to change those because there's so much competition in that marketplace. When you go to a Murtha pool, now we're talking about a sole source pool. Now, in fact, one of the advantages that, because a company like Murtha knows that we have laws that expect us to promote competition, one of the things they did was they did a bid called a piggybackable bid at another school district and said, we will honor that price. So the truth is we already know the price for the pool itself, okay? So the pool, but not the hole the pool goes in, not the deck around the pool, that has to be done by an installer. And it has to be done by a certified Murtha pool installer, which is a subset of all people who build pools. So think again in terms of how much competition is there in the marketplace, and not as to a pro or a con, but thinking of commoditization and the potential for somebody to increase their profits because there's less competition. Making sense? Okay.
I do have a clarification because you keep talking about a Murtha pool.
Yes.
Can you tell?
Sure, for everyone to understand
yes,
what a Murtha
for
pool
everyone
is.
to understand what is a Murtha
That's-
pool.
That's an excellent question. I wish I had put a slide in here because I had the same question even as we were doing a staff presentation the other day. My fault. A standard shotcrete pool, a lot of us in Southern California have seen them built. We dig a hole in the ground, contractor puts in reinforcing steel, and they shoot concrete out of a truck through a pressurized hose, and they shoot it against all of that, and then eventually they put a nice smooth plaster coating on it. Because there's lots of people that know how to use concrete, lots of people that know how to use plaster, it's kind of a commodity. A Murtha pool is a different approach, and with those types of pools, like concrete does, it cracks. Plaster cracks. Water is the ultimate destroyer of all things. There's a whole science lesson in that. We could bring one of our science teachers in about how water as a chemical does that. But anyway, it does, and we know it destroys pools. So you have to get them fixed because they crack, it gets in, it rusts the reinforcing steel, all kinds of things. We try to protect that by recoating pools, a lot of different things, but eventually you have to replace it. It has to be rebuilt. So Murtha is one of a number of manufacturers. So actually Murtha is not the only person with a prefabricated pool approach, but Murtha is one of those that came up with a pool design that is different. And this difference in pool design is that you pour a concrete floor in the hole, and then you stand up stainless steel walls all the way around the sides of the pool to create the walls of the pool. And then you put a lining inside of that pool, and it's made out of PVC. That lining doesn't crack, because now we're talking about a synthetic plastic material, not a natural plaster material. It doesn't crack, so it actually lasts a little bit longer. So now you get into the question, you're not comparing apples and oranges. Mirtha will tell you, hey, our lining will last longer, than you won't have to replaster. There are cost benefits in that. All of those types of things to weigh into this as well. Does that make sense? It's a really good question, Mrs. Fleur.
And
Thank
that's
you
been
for asking.
tested? That's been tested over time? Mirtha's
There are.
been around 40 years?
It has
you know
been,
that?
it has been around for quite some time. There are a lot of installations of Mirtha pools. They're used very commonly. What we hear often from people is Mirtha pools are what they use at the Olympics. Well, there's another reason why Mirtha pools are used at Olympics, and that is because since they're a prefabricated pool, and sometimes pools are above ground pools, this is the type of pool that can be above ground and can be installed very quickly because it's prefabricated, rather than the time of shotcreting a pool and allowing it to cure, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, there's the lining. It's very, very exacting. So you know at that high level of competition in sports, I have, you know, a very milled, you know, to great tolerance structure. So nobody's going to complain, I'm in lane 1 and it's a little, the plaster surface is a little different here or whatever. It's installed in municipalities here in California. It's installed in schools here in California as a pool. So that's kind of the understanding of a Mirtha pool. Are there other questions on it? I wish I had.
For
something more.
clarification, all the other pools in our district are shotcrete.
That's correct. All the other pools in our district are shotcrete, and most pools at high schools in California are shotcrete. Mirtha has, and that type of pool has been increasing in the number of usages as their pricing has come down to be more competitive with a shotcrete pool. And what you see here in Mr. Campbell's estimate is that based on other projects that we look at, a Mirtha pool ultimately should cost very similarly to, just a little bit more, than a shotcrete pool, remembering that it all comes down to market conditions and our pool of bidders for the pool. So we still don't know why we ended up over. Yes,
So,
Mrs.
so I
Yes.
just have a question about that. Has the price of a Mirtha pool changed in the last 4 or 6 months? Because I know 4 or 6 months ago, when we were talking about this, the Mirtha pool, the original project was proposed with a Mirtha pool, and it was a lot more.
That project was, and the answer is it couldn't have changed because it was proposed then under the piggyback contract. So the district then was buying the pool at a set price. It's about $600,000, $660,000 for the pool itself from Mirtha, our contract with Mirtha. It's the installer's price to put the pool in that really made the difference in that. So we can still buy off of that exact same piggyback. A Mirtha pool will still cost us $660,000 out of the $3 million. So again, think, the Mirtha part itself is only 1/5 of the cost of just building the pool. But that 1/5 drives the number of people who can do the other 4/5 from a pool of potential contractors that's this big to a pool of potential contractors that's this big. Now, whether or not we could conjecture that that's why those bids came in that way, you know, it would be conjecture. We don't know for a fact. We just know that that's what we had. The pool was 600. Installing the pool ended up $3 million over budget. Doesn't work for us. Does that make sense? Any other questions on the Mirtha pool? This is a really good one. I wish I had had a slide for you on it. Okay, so the other component is not just accuracy for us in predicting what it's going to cost, which is something you expect of us as staff. You give us a budget and you don't want us to go over budget. The other issue is the price to value benefit is highest in the commodity and lowest in sole source items. Now, this is somewhat intuitive. They talk about it in economics class, but the issue is that all the requirements are the same. The scope is equivalent, but vendors then, because the requirements are all the same, have to lower their prices to win purchases. We can all look at Amazon and see that very, very easily. We all look there and say, hey, it's the same thing. I'm going with the cheapest version of it. That's basic economics. So public purchasing policies promote for the taxpayers that we should be getting the high price to value benefit, because taxpayers are paying for all of these things. The state says you all need to make sure that you buy in such a way that we're promoting high value to benefit. We want to get the most we can out of every dollar that the taxpayers give us. And one of those requirements that we hear about a lot is the or equal clause in contracts. So say I'm going to buy this particular, I'm going to buy a projector. The question is, the state says you need to not just say I want an Epson projector, I want a projector that can throw this on a screen this big at so many lumens, and there's all of these requirements, right? So that we get the most value. We don't allow vendors to take advantage of the limited pool, right? Okay, I want to keep moving on so we can get into discussion. So the other issue besides sole source and commodities is design bid build versus design build. So that's one of the other permutations in this. Mirtha pool, not Mirtha pool, design bid build versus design build. Design bid build, we always put very detailed requirements. A lot of them, and they're very detailed. My example with a projector, how many lumens it is, you know, what the throw has to be, whether or not you can do that thingy that says it's going to change the trapezoid at certain, all you know, We do it with computers, we do it with everything. It maintains commoditization in each requirement. So what it says is we're not commoditizing the whole thing, because on a pool, you can't buy that exact pool at that exact high school like we can these. These are commoditized as a whole thing. When we buy a pool or a building, we try to get commoditization in the parts, not in the whole, right? The scope is least variable. The price is most variable, because we're very detailed in our requirements. So price is the thing that has to give, because our scope isn't going to give. And our decision is based on price alone. Now, one thing about it being made on price alone is that's the easiest for us all to understand. Okay, I got the same thing. You all are giving me different prices. Yours is lowest. That's easy, right? It's also the easiest to justify to other people because they can understand it. And it's easiest to maintain value because we know what the requirements were. They can't change. So we know that the value proposition we signed up for on the day we said purchase, there's no way anybody can provide us less than what we thought we were getting. In design build, we go with the least detailed requirements. So the idea here is, in order to make it as competitive as possible, we limit our musts and nevers to, I must have a boardroom, and it must have a dais, and it must have a sound system and lights. But we don't say how high the dais has to be off of the floor. We don't say it has to be wood. It could be plastic laminate and those things. And we leave that to the vendor, saying the only things that matter to me are what I said. Everything else, give me the cheapest thing you possibly can. Great news about that is it lowers our costs because it makes it very cost competitive. The bad news about that is if I forgot to be very specific that I was not going to accept plastic laminate for my dais, now I've got a problem. Right? So it maximizes the commoditization of the whole purchase. Price is least variable. That part's great. When I do that for the boardroom, I know it's going to cost exactly this because I told folks, that's how much I got for a boardroom. If you're going to propose it, there's no point in even proposing it to me unless you can meet my price component. So drive it down. Give me plastic. I just need it to work. Okay. And the decision then is based on the best value for the price. So now what you do is, instead of having one set of requirements, everybody bids to that, you say, this is my price. Now everybody tell me how much I can get for it. So now what you're doing is you're looking at it differently. Instead of saying, I've got the same thing, I want the lowest price, you're saying, I'm going to spend this much, give me the most stuff for my price, right? It's more difficult for us to understand and communicate, as you see here. It's more difficult to justify to other people how we came to our conclusions. And it can be more difficult to maintain value because all of those requirements aren't clear. So when they propose it and say, this is what you're going to get for that, you better make sure that you dotted I's and crossed T's on all of what you wanted to get for that dollar that you agreed to spend.
Because changing your mind later is very expensive.
Very expensive, because now you're not in a competitive marketplace. Again, you're
Yeah.
dealing with one sole source. Just keep remembering that. Sole source is going to cost us money because the other person holds the keys. So
How many projects have we done with the design build?
this
in-
district has not yet done any projects with design build. The state legislature offered it about 10 years ago to school districts as an option for projects of $10 million and more. They started happening around the state. About 2 years ago, the state changed the law saying that basically this has been successful. Districts have used it well, and we have not had concerns about it. So the state lowered the requirement to $1 million for a project to do design build. And this district has not yet done that. Many districts have.
Are there any staff requirements in terms of staffing, competencies that are needed within the department to oversee this? Or is it similar that we have people on staff?
Well, as you could see, let me back up. As you could see, on the issue of maintaining, first, evaluating best value for price, if you haven't done it before, then you want to have some experience.
Got it.
Now, our legal team has experience with design build. They have done it before with other school districts, community colleges, and so forth. I have been involved in those types of things. But it is, the more that you become, because it's a little more complicated, the more that you become skilled in it, the better you can make sure you don't end up with a hiccup. So it is a little bit, it requires, just like if you were doing it yourself, if it's just lowest price, that's easy. But when I get into best value, I mean, if you've ever argued with your spouse like I've argued with mine over whether or not the particular thing that we're looking at is the best value for us, she has her requirements, I have my requirements, you know, that's a little bit different. So the other issue about design bid build and design build is that cost certainty comes at a different point. And particularly on this project is one of the reasons to talk about this, is because one of our issues is right now we have no cost certainty. We have a very, very skilled cost estimator that's told us, and we believe that what he's told us here is true. But we also had professional architects who build a lot of projects, construction managers who build it, who told us in August that it was going to cost within our budget, and a month later it didn't. Cost certainty in design bid build comes on the day you get the bid. That's when you get your cost certainty. And you've already designed and all those kinds of things. Cost certainty in design build comes at a different place. So let me go through this real quickly. I'm feeling like I'm taking too much of our time here explaining. I hope this is helpful, though. In design bid build, for us to do the everything scope, to bring this to complete, in other words, build the pool and the team room and everything else, we won't have certainty in the cost for that for probably about a year, because we have to go through the entire design process, estimate all of it, look at all of those individual requirements. How much is this going to cost? How much competition is there? For example, one of the things that Mr. Campbell will tell you is that using a different lighting system versus the most commonly used lighting system could save $200,000 on this project. So even in a traditional design, the question of commodities versus sole source starts to play in, and knowing what that's going to cost is going to be based on when that decision is made. If we were to revise and rebid the existing pool project, we could be certain in a few months. So if we did it our traditional method, design, bid, build, we could be certain in a few months because it's mostly already designed. It would need to be reworked in order to fit this budget. We take out the existing restroom building, we remodel our existing restrooms, those types of things to save money to get to option C that Mr. Campbell has put. But we can do that fairly quickly, within a few months, get the bids out, and get the bids back, and then we'll have certainty within a few months about whether or not it really can be done. Now, remember, he's saying that that scope should cost us no more than the number that's in here. But our experience was a few months ago, very similar scope, people bid at a lot higher cost, right? So back to the, if we change to a Shot Creek pool, that would take longer than rebidding the Merthyr pool. Now in design build, the costs are fixed and the scope is variable. So see that difference between the two? On one, the scope is fixed, costs are variable. The other one, the costs are fixed and the scope is variable. The certainty comes at pre-design based on our scoping document. So you tell them, these are my absolute musts it must have, and these are the things it must never have, and that's it. And we think we've got it all, and we may get plastic laminate on our dais because we didn't put that as a must or a never. Because we put that document together early on, and it's actually, you saw that on the 14th. There was that scoping document. It's only about 4 or 5 pages long instead of 1,000 pages of construction drawings. If we were to do that, then we give that to the contracting community and the design community, and we say, now tell us what you would give us in a pool for our price. Here's our price. We are going to go on best value, which means the price is a little mushy, but we're thinking we're going to spend this much money. Tell us how much pool and stuff we can get for that much money. You can do that earlier. Does this make sense? Why we can do that earlier?
So we can, with this type of process, we don't have to take the lowest possible bid. We take the bid that offers us the best value.
That is one of the reasons why. That's correct. Your answer.
So
first the answer is
whatever they put in that gets us the most items.
That's right.
On the bottom one.
So
On the design build.
I'm sorry, I will go off on a tangent and I will come back quickly, I promise. Because it's very pertinent to your question earlier about us and doing design build and legislative authorization to do design build. Because as you just talked about, it's not price alone. Taxpayers look and say, oh, how do I know that staff is not just paying up? This is complicated. How do I know they have a good criteria? Well, the state wanted to make sure that there were very clear rules with regard to how to determine best value. Plus, the contracting community wants very clear values with regard to how you're going to determine best value. So, because they all are sitting there and somebody could be $200,000 lower on the pool and says, well, why are you giving it to him? I think mine is the best value. And he comes to a board meeting and says, you're paying more than you should. My price is $200,000. Theirs is 200 or 200,000 less. Theirs is more. Mine has everything theirs has, and even more. Your staff just did a bad judgment call about best value. You follow me? So that's really that whole process of defining ahead of time and understanding how you're going to determine what best value is very important because everybody has a vested interest in making sure we get the true best value. And it's kind of like my wife and I arguing over whether or not a particular teapot is the best value. Does that make sense? Okay. So if we were to go with either the everything, or we just say we're going to do just the 50-meter pool, because we have that scoping document basically done, we can get that out, we could advertise it, we could get proposals back within a few months, and we will know absolutely for sure, here's your option board, the best value proposition for your money is this. Now, again, it'll be the first time we've gone through that. You might say, why are we going with the not lowest, the second lowest, or whatever? It will be a new experience, but you're kind of understanding what that process would be like. But we could do it. The point is, when do you get cost certainty, which is a particular value to us when we're establishing our budgets. Okay, I promise this is the last slide. This was the last answer, which is, well, what can we afford? Can we afford everything? So kind of our business school classes and economics, net present value. of escalation in construction costs versus interest costs that we pay. So construction's going up, so let's buy it now, because it's only gonna be more expensive tomorrow. Well, yeah, but if we don't have the money and we have to borrow the money, we have to pay for that money, that costs us something too. Well, the fact is, basically, construction escalation on average has been going at about 4 to 5% a year. That's what Mr. Campbell says he has in his estimate. Within about a 10-year window, that tends to be about what it costs us to borrow 10-year kind of money, is about 4 to 5 years, which is really kind of, in the short term, using financing. We do this at home in different places too. On the short term, if I'm gonna pay it back really quick, it's just kind of like cost spreading. I'm gonna spread my costs out so it's not all in one month, it's in a couple. In the short term, that makes a lot of sense. They're equivalent. But once we get over 10 years, because the cost of money, because nobody wants to bet on the interest rate more than 10 years out, money gets more expensive and it starts costing us more. Now, we do this with large capital programs like the bond program because they're so expensive. Nobody can handle the cost all in one period. If we went out to our taxpayers and said, pay for all of the construction you just did in next year's tax assessment so you don't have it next year, they're gonna want to get after us, right? So that's why we use long-term money in borrowing. Currently, we have more identified priorities for the money we have available to us for these types of projects than we have money. We have more things that we want to do, and particularly our air conditioning project is a very, very expensive commitment that we've made, and we've been planning for it for years, but it's not like in these, because the GO bond didn't support air conditioning, and because we get little bits of one-time money from the state that you have allocated to this, it's not like whole districts worth of air conditioning. You've been very prudent in doing that. And in fact, with yesterday's governor's budget, there's a little bit more one-time money coming our way that, again, you can put for these types of things, and say, hey, that's meeting more of our commitment to providing air conditioning. So based on that, we expect, Mr. Trader expects that we're kind of in that place. We think it's all going to work out. We're going to have enough for the air conditioning projects and those things to meet your priorities. If we didn't, we would have told you. We think we're going to, but it's not all nailed down. We don't have the checks in hand for all of that. The state owes us money for the modernizations that we did that we still don't have, and the state doesn't want to issue bonds, and we don't know for sure when we're going to get it. So lining up that timing to when we want to get projects done and everything else, there's still work to do there. So the key message there is we've got enough. If you wanted to do this, Mr. Trader and I believe you could do all the way up through equity at this school at one time now, but it's getting tight. Every time we make a priority like this, whether it's air conditioning or this, that just means that our options when the state doesn't come through with the money in the period we thought they were going to come through, that potentially we have to borrow money to get there. Making sense? And on the borrowing money, typically we've been very frugal as a district. We pay as we go. We don't have a high interest rate credit card at this district that we use, which is very good for our taxpayers, very good for our district. You get the most out of it because you're not paying for money. We're paying for stuff. The other thing is that non-bond financing costs come from our unrestricted resources. In other words, when we do pay for money and buy money, that's money we could have used for stuff, all kinds of stuff, unrestricted options of stuff versus paying for money. Making sense? That's our presentation. We've got lots of things to talk about. I've asked both Mike Halt, for those in the audience as well, as in the blue shirt up here, Assistant Principal Tim Tolsda are here to represent their school. We asked them to come up to the mic in case you have questions for them. The consultants that I mentioned are both here. Mr. Marsh is up here. We're all at the mic so that you can engage us in the questions you need to come to your decisions.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was very enlightening. Do you think I should do these first?
You can't. It might be smart to listen to the public before you
Okay.
engage.
Okay, so we have a lot of questions, but I think we're going to go to the public comments first, and then, because then we can discuss what everybody says. Okay. Oh, you need to read, yeah.
No, I don't need to read it.
Martha needs to read.
Okay. Don't have it here.
Wait, let me make sure I have it in mind.
I don't have it here.
Sherry,
Sherry, it's not here.
maybe just read this little piece.
I'll just read one. Yeah, thank you for directing me. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board regarding items on the special agenda. Depending upon the nature of the comments, the board president or superintendent may respond, or the president may call upon board members for brief comments, questions of clarification, provided reference to staff or other resources for factual information, or request the superintendent to report back to the board at a subsequent meeting concerning the matter. However, in compliance with board policy and the Ralph M. Brown Act, the board is not permitted to take action on non-agenda items. When addressing the board, it's helpful if you state your name and address for the record.
Okay, thank you. The first speaker is Liz Mcnabb.
Good morning. My name is Liz Mcnabb. I live at 1641 Briar Rose in Costa Mesa. And I'm here today to address all of you regarding this issue. I think we all can agree that this should have taken place before the current pool was closed. I am going to tell you that I had the opportunity to go watch our girls compete yesterday in Laguna Beach, and it was really amazing to go down there and see a program that was so vital. 16 girls on varsity. We have 7 girls. Our girls cannot take one break for swim. There are no substitutes. If a girl is sick from school, they do not play with a complete team because we don't have a team to compete on that level because so many girls have quit the program because there is no pool to swim in. Last year, we got to the 3rd round of CIF for the first time ever. I mean, that was an amazing. We were a program on the rise, and now we can barely field a team. So I would like to say to our athletes, I am very proud of you. I am proud of you for sticking with it and for working hard and for representing our school. I am proud of our coach, Mitch White, for staying dedicated to the team and the goal of Estancia having a world-class swim program and a water polo program. What I am not proud is of this administration, of this district, and of this school board. You have created an environment where it is acceptable to waste taxpayer dollars with no accountability. And the amount of facilities waste management and errors that have gone on at Estancia Zone is beyond comprehension. No one in the private sector would have their job if they performed this way. No business owner would be able to stay in business. They would have gone bankrupt if they'd have made the decisions that you have made. Any student who performed a class project would get a failing grade for performing as this district has performed. So where are we now? You're telling us that it would be $100,000 to reopen the pool. Well, I can think of about 35% of that where that could come from. A bonus for the superintendent who was on medical leave for the predominant part of the year. I find that mind-boggling. Where is that superior performance? I am sorry if you've been ill, but does that mean that you deserve a $35,000 bonus? So where are we now? I implore you to reopen this pool and get the best pool possible moving forward in the future. Mrs. Snell and I had a conversation at the Estancia Homecoming Pep Assembly, and she assured me that we would make it right. We all know that if this was on the other foot, and Estancia had Newport Harbor's equipment, that the pool at Newport Harbor would have already been refilled. You need to refill our pool and then get us the pool that we deserve.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Howard Hull.
Good morning, trustees. Thank you. Staff. Oh, very good.
You're already time's up.
try and make this brief. My background is in real estate for a number of years, for not only in the lending side, the numbers, Costa Mesa Finance Board, as well as Institutional Real Estate, Inc., which is one of the leading proponents of commercial and institutional real estate. Matter of fact, the pension funds of all the teachers are managed by our group, as well as some of the companies I've worked for or have owned in the past with their family business. So I'm a little sensitive to what on both sides of the balance of cost and benefits to what we have here and what we're looking forward. One of the things I just feel poor for Estancia, because if you really look at the track history and really dig into the numbers, and it was always be a good little project, I just don't have the time, but if you're looking back at the 2001, when they had Measure A coming through, we had to redo the science courts because the science courts were done wrong. And of course, now we're looking at vapor leaks that we're having in there because when they came in the second time, they didn't cap the sewer. Because I remember with John Carpenter. Also, my background, I've been helping as a volunteer coach for close to 30 years with John Carpenter at Estancia. Mitch White, who's taken over, has done a fantastic job, and he should be commended. The other issue is coming back in 2006. The pool that was remodeled then took too much time, completely over budget. When we came in, the construction quality was absolute horrible. We would walk in and try and put the goals in the tubes that you put the goals in were all at an angle. When we started putting poles in, they were off 6 to 8 degrees. Now, this is not rocket science. I was started working for my father in college, building street lights and putting in street lights and warning beacons and digging the holes through college. And I said, if I could do that, I'm sure anybody else can do that for work for a professional firm. Obviously not. Our contractors and supervisors at that point. We look at the baseball diamond fiasco. We look at the solar panels and the recently. My biggest thing is I think the staff was trying to work hard at it, but didn't really lack the depth of knowledge of what it takes moving forward into this type of project. I do these projects all the time, and I understand the cost is going up and even the timeline. I ordered 3 months ago skylights for 2 buildings of mine right over here at Airway. I'm still waiting for them. And they're built in Santa Ana 2 miles away. So yes, there is a time we are going to go up, but I would really encourage you. I understand what he's proposing here, but we need that pool back now for Estancia. We cannot wait 3 years. 3 years, you're basically going to put a dagger in the heart of a good program. And Mitch White has worked very hard, along with his wife, who supports him and comes out and supports the team with his family. We're very blessed to have that. The parents see that. We're getting good parent support, and I think that's crucial at this time in life. But I would encourage all of you, let's get the money. Let's get this pool back up and running. And it's not hard to do. I've talked to several people at the Mesa Water District. I've talked to people at Fountain Valley Water District. And oh, by the way, I did build one of the largest sewer plants in USAID outside in the Royal Kingdom and in Egypt. So I said, it's not hard to do. We just have to get the right people and the right adult supervision. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Brazda.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Brazda, 973 Congress Street, Costa Mesa. First of all, I'd like to say I think this is the first board meeting I've ever attended at 8 a.m. A little sneaky, I'm not sure. I appreciate all of the information that was presented on the cost. However, I'm still a little baffled about why this wasn't presented in August. At the last parent community meeting on 12/19, several issues were brought up. The cost analysis was told to all of the parents at a previous meeting that it would be presented at that time, and of course it wasn't. And for me, that's a big red flag. It's like, say what you mean what you say, and I'm finding that that often doesn't happen with the district personnel here in this district. So that made me start doing a lot of digging. So at that meeting, Mr. Holcomb admitted the district made a mistake, and there are a lot of ramifications of that one mistake. The community parents, coaches, and swimmers were and water polo players, all the water athletes. We were all lied to by the district regarding the pool equipment, the pumps, the heaters. We were all told that those parts were given away. So being lied to, for me, is the ultimate betrayal. It's like the kiss of Judas, and the words integrity and transparency come to mind. Another ramification of that is that this pool has divided and torn our community apart. That's a huge one for me. We should be building bridges, not tearing our community apart. The district is not providing equal access to extracurricular activities by making the students at EHS take a bus. Not now, not ever, and definitely not for the next 2.5 years. They shouldn't have to be sharing a pool with Costa Mesa. It causes the coaches to battle for time in the pool. It causes dissension among the coaches and the principals. It's not a good plan. It's not right. It's not equitable for water athletes. She already mentioned it earlier, who have aquatic scholarship goals. It's not equitable for EHS water athletes who have spent years building up their aquatic program. If you need help finding out which funds to get the money from, I can help. I am a ASTA union rep. I'm on the bargaining team there. I'm really good at organizing. I know 4 of the board members are up for re-election. I'll help whoever's running against you. I'll help them organize, and I'll go door to door. So I just implore you to make the right decision. I would really like to see the pool up and running in 2 months from
Thank
now.
you. Thank you for your comments.
Thanks.
Mitchell White.
My name is Mitchell White, 1016 West 19th Street, Costa Mesa. I'm currently the boys water polo coach, girls water polo coach, boys and girls swim head coach. So I'm basically the aquatic program. I do employ very good coaches. We have, as parents have mentioned, we're working really hard to get this program up and to a level where we can compete. The absence of the pool has been damaging, but I want to talk more about the long-term, short-term. My parents, I'm pretty sure you've heard from them already, and they're going to share more about the short-term, what their wishes are. So long-term, I'm more concerned about the new pool. I'm glad we finally got the information today. We actually had serious thought about our pool, and that's good. I want to make sure that the long-term, we have the amenities. It's an all-in-one build. The progress, you know, going piece by piece, they said it's going to cost more, but it's also going to cause us to be back at Costa Mesa Pool. Every time they build a structure on that pool deck or around it, pool will be closed, construction site, we're back at Mesa. So if you think we're having a tough time now, imagine doing that 2 or 3 more times because we're building little buildings. So a one-time build is my push. The team room / classroom is very important to me. Yesterday or Tuesday, rain like crazy. We're going over there for our practice. The coaches were very helpful with us. They opened up the classroom and we did a long chalk talk during the major portion of the rain. The girls' season is the worst season. It's during the winter, we have cold weather. They need a place to be able to store their gear, be in a place where we can talk and they're not shivering, things like that. So we need that shelter, we need that classroom to actually expand the program. So it's very vital. Before, one of the members mentioned in the last meeting, 2 projects were slated at $7 million, they came in at $10 million. We're listening to numbers at $8 million last time, now we're looking at these numbers, they're all below $10 million. You discuss, we can find an extra $1 million if that's the only problem. But in those 2 projects, you found $3 million and made it happen, gave them everything they wanted. So I'm wondering why Estancia, West Side, has to stay at the 7 or the 4.5 construction, 7 soft costs. Why is that so important that we can't jump to that $10 million? I mean, if these guys they're going to make that design build and the number is the number, then why can't we put that number a little higher and get the things that we need? Those are things that run through my head. Last thing is talking about the 10-year, pools asked for 10 years. Mesa's going to be needing our pool within the next few years because of a remodel. So guys got to work this out.
Yeah, thank you very much. Kathy Hartwell. Oh.
My equipment.
My name's Kathy Hartwell. I live at 1869 Elba Circle, and if I may read this, I'd appreciate your listening. I've raised 3 successful graduates from Estancia High School, which include a CIF champion and a valedictorian. Needless to say, I'm extremely proud of my children's experience at Estancia and what Estancia offered them. Sadly, presently, I am extremely disheartened by what is going on in relationship to the pool. My concerns today are with you, the Newport-Mesa Unified School District. The inept decision-making and reckless fiscal responsibility has all but contributed to the destruction of Estancia's swim program. If you do not fix this, you will be responsible for its extinction. A program cannot survive without a pool for 3 years. It is with that said that I urge you to repair and refill the current Estancia High School pool while you finish your studies, research pool designs, and put the project out to bid. I would like to close with an absolute and adamant vote of no confidence in the Newport-Mesa Unified School District's ability to tackle this project from its conception to its ending. The decision alone to drain and dismantle the current pool months prior to getting bids affirms my no confidence stance. Unbelievable. I urge you to listen to the community and to the students of Estancia High School when they cry out in desperation to what appears to be deaf ears. Repair and refill the current pool. Figure out a way to make your wrong right and move forward on the new pool project. While this happens, our kids, your kids, should not have to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry, excuse me. Terry Kurtzer.
I'm Terry Curzon. I live at 428.5 Hamilton Street in Costa Mesa, and I have one student at Estancia right now in the swim program. I have another one that may be coming in 2 years, and I say may, because if there isn't a pool, that's exactly what I think another person said, that it's tearing the community apart. It's giving us a reason to rival even more than it should be. But one of the things, I've been at the last 2 community meetings, and I believe the one in October, we were told that there was going to be an inspector to actually check the pool to see if we could reverse this in a minimal amount of time. And I think what he went over in the first part of his presentation was it will take as little as 2 months to get this other pool running again. If he had done that in October, we'd have water now. We'd have our swim program, we'd have our water polo program at least for the end of the year. So I implore that you do that and take as much time as you need to get us the pool we need, because you're wasting our time and you're robbing my kid of a great experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Smith.
Thank you, Mrs. Snell. Good morning, everyone. I have just one question I'll ask you. I'm going through the chain of command here. Who gave final approval to close the pool?
I mean, I'm sorry, what do you mean by that?
Who gave final approval to close the pool?
No one gave final approval at the board level, so that's not the issue here.
Someone had to say, yes, please close.
Yes.
Who was that person that did that?
I'm not able to share that with you, Mr. Smith, because quite honestly, we're looking into that, and it's an investigation, so it's under confidential situation.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Bill Thorpe.
Good morning. My name is William Thorpe. I live at 1649 Polo Place. I'm a structural engineer that has done public school construction for over 20 years. I think Mr. Holcomb's presentation was phenomenal in terms of outlining options for contracting. I'm a little confused as to why that has to happen at all. The staff should be qualified and be able to make those decisions. Why we're rehashing that at this point is a little confusing. The board, if they are not educated in these items, should be as soon as they become board members. There should be a program to teach you how contracts work. I think you all know that. It's sad that all of this time has expired. It is sad that there is no program that these kids can get behind, and it is becoming a bit systematic with the district, and that students are missing out on a lot of opportunities. I'm reminding myself as I was sitting there, it's sort of the same thing. We still don't have math books for our students in high school. It seems like the district needs to get ahead of the curve and not be reactionary. Thank you.
Thank you. Clay Epperson.
Hi, my name is Clay Epperson. I'm a board member on the aquatics, the water polo, and the swim boosters committees. And I'd like to speak on behalf of the boosters and tell you that I think there'd be 100% support for refilling the old pool at the price point of $100,000. I wish it would have already been done by now, but I think everyone would be behind it, and we should do it. It's expensive and it's unfortunate, but I think we should do it. Secondly, and more importantly, I think that just moving forward, we should push maximally to get the most amount of facilities. In other words, to build a pool without the facilities is going to shoot us in the foot. We need to have the best possible outcome from this. So what I'm imploring is find the money. We need to do this right the first time. We can't keep shutting down the pool and do additional build-outs. Let's get it done right now. Let's find the money and let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Annie Mitchell. Hi.
Hi, good morning. My name is Annie Mitchell, and I'm a senior at Estancia High School. I'm here today to represent the 510 people that signed my petition to fill up Estancia's 25-meter pool because it's just so hard on all of us. There are many reasons why we want the pool reopened. For the students, we don't want to be bused across town to our rival pool. It's really hard. Going in there every day, we have our heads down, and it's hard for me to speak about. Costa Mesa doesn't want to have their pool time restricted, and neither do we. It's hard. Neither of our teams can be as good as we need to be because we only get 2 hours of practice because we have to share the pool. Our students' athletics aren't only being affected, it's our grade point averages. Mr. Hall and Mr. Tolzda have signed my honor roll papers for the last I've gotten them 6 semesters in a row, and I don't feel like I'm gonna get one this year because it's not how I feel I've been performing because I'm being bussed over, and that takes 30 minutes of time each day. I also think that the trust in the district between our students and our parents and everyone is just depleted. We don't feel that you guys can complete our pool project because of all of these things that have happening, all of these separate options and things that you've discussed, but nothing has happened with them. Nothing has evolved from this, and we just want it made right. And for the current and future Estancia students, I mean, we have freshmen coming in, and they might not even have a pool. If we choose to just keep us at Mesa's pool and not fill up our 25-meter pool, they might not ever have one home game. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Did you bring your petition?
It's an online petition.
Okay. So why don't can you forward it?
Yeah.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you for doing that. Okay, we'll go on with the discussion then. Ms. Matoya. Who do you want to ask a question to?
More than likely, Mr. Holcomb.
Okay.
Do any of the options listed on page 5 require us going back to the DSA?
Yes. Am I? Yes, if we, actually, all of our options at this point require us going back to DSA, with the exception of just rebidding the existing design that we have. And that includes a separate pool building that we believe would be money better spent to use the restrooms in the existing facilities. So that's what you see in the cost. Now, we do believe that there are two different options to DSA. To rework what we have as an existing design, we can do in a much shorter period of time than to design from scratch a whole new project. So both will require going back to DSA. Those ones that say we could have certainty within the next few months involve dealing with modifying the existing. To wait for a year is start from scratch. Also know that if you went to design build, while we would have price certainty within a few months, the design builder would come up with a completely new design. We would have a price, but DSA would then happen afterwards because design happens afterwards. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I had three things down. Can I do them all at once? Okay. Secondly, I really appreciated the work that the district did and that the companies that we worked with did. And I, for one, am really tired of feeling like I'm behind the 8 ball, because I thought that what I was getting was complete and detailed. And this is complete and detailed. And I personally would like this type of scope and sequence on any project of this size before we go into making any of our decisions. Because we need to start taking more time to do it right the first time. From the time I even got on the board, I always felt, when I sat where you sat, I thought the board was reactive. And I can see why, because that's how it feels. And so this was great. This is where we need to do and move forward. Have we done things not as wonderfully in the past? Absolutely. But if we don't learn from our own mistakes, what does that say about education? And that's what we do. That's 2. Number 3, I really appreciate the fact that we're trying to get equity in the facilities at all of our schools. And that being said, when all the dust settles on all of this, I want to go back and revisit a couple things at Costa Mesa High School that were not done with equity beforehand. But I was not on the board then. So that's what I have now until someone else says something that makes me want to say something else.
Okay, Mrs. Fleur?
Yeah, I want to go back to this document here from ARCPAC. Thank you. What concerns me is several things, and I think they've been mentioned here. I have asked for a timeline because what I'm very, very concerned about is the level of transparency. When I read on the very first page that this thing, you told me the equipment in the mechanical room, pumps, filters, heaters, et cetera, had been removed from the facility, and that the pool could no longer offer utility because of missing equipment. The next sentence is, I found the mechanical room to be intact with all of the equipment still in place. Now,
Which is it?
Mr. Holcomb, I know that you have not been here, so I'm absolving you of part of this is because you were not involved. And so but I am very concerned that this board has been led to believe certain items. I have requested a timeline, and I'm going to ask it again. I want a timeline. I want to know exactly what happened here, because this is unacceptable. This is absolutely unacceptable. And I know that we're going to make this right. We will make this right. But at the same time, decisions have been made. We were told one thing, and we have been talking to the community about, well, it's not, it's not, it's not. We have community people coming, and we are supposed to place our trust because we are lay individuals. We are not experts. We trust our individuals that we hire to do the work because they are the experts. And for us to find out later that we have lack of trust in our own experts, it boggles my mind, and I am very angry about this. So I know that there's probably other lights, But as far as I'm concerned, it's another $100,000 mistake that our staff has cost us. And it's taxpayer money. So I don't know whether we need to, are we bifurcating this issue in terms of two motions, one motion, or what? But, I mean, because right now, we only have one, it's only one motion, and it says provide direction to the staff. So how would you like us to do this?
It really is left to your option as a board to determine how you would like to address this. I
Okay.
expected that there would be direction regarding the existing pool, and there would be direction regarding the future pool. So whether you
Okay.
do that in two motions, one
All right.
motion, or even more is
So-
your pleasure.
I would like to place a motion on the thing that we open up the new pool, that we open up the pool.
Second the motion.
Okay, I think we have a couple speakers before we vote on. I mean, I think we should talk about this, yeah. Okay, Mrs. Yelsey?
Yeah, I agree it should be in two motion, and there are two different issues. And the most immediate one is the current pool and reopening it, and I agree with that. I do have, I think someone who spoke said who was responsible for this, and Dr. Navarro said that it's being looked into. It is a personnel matter, so it probably won't be discussed in public. However, I agree that something should be done. Somebody should take the responsibility for this, whoever it was, because we did hear last year that it was closed. No one, why did it close? How did it close? And we never got an answer to that. And then we heard that it could not possibly be open. So we heard the same thing all of you heard. I mean, it's not something different.
Right.
So now that it can be open, I agree, it should be open. But we still should find out, I would like to know that there's somebody responsible for this and something's been done about it, because it can happen again.
Thank you. Ms. Franco?
I agree with the motion, but I have one question. Does the 100,000 include the replacement of the equipment that has been removed?
Yes, there's some.
It does?
According to this report.
It says nothing has been removed, but then it says some equipment has been, so which is it?
Let me help with that. I may need some help from Mr. Marsh on this, but I'll tell you what I understand to be the case. There was equipment that was removed from the site. That equipment or alternate equipment was subsequently replaced at the site. In Mr. Moeller's investigation, as you see there are specific pieces of equipment, because they have sat for a couple of months, that he says these probes, I'm not a pool expert, but you see the note about probes, that should be replaced. It is in his cost estimate already. So you see there, what you see there is the full cost to get the pool operational. And to clarify again, what Mr. Moeller says there is that if we do it, and there is the potential that something won't start up right. We believe there's sufficient opportunity, say for example, if something doesn't start up right, maybe replacing the lights is something we don't do because the existing lights work. The nice thing about replacing the lights is that then we know that we're not going to have to deal with them in the middle of this year, and we can take the lights and reuse them on the future pool. So, those are some little options we have to deal with hiccups in it, but we believe that that's the right number that would get us a year's worth of use. At the end of a year, it would need to be recoded. So that's why the plan is we need to get a plan to put this pool in place ASAP.
Okay, thank you.
Dana Black?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that, I too want to do the total build because we were able to do equity during the recession when construction costs were significantly less. And we were able to get a lot more, bang for our buck, both at the Estancia Stadium, the pool, Newport Harbor. We did, and also the enclaves, and we were able to do a lot more because we, the costs were really, and we were worried about this when we were talking about the pool and also the theater at Estancia. We wanted that to come in, hopefully within, a possibility at that time. However, looking at those costs, I too agree with Coach and other members of the community that are in the business that nickel and diming it is just worse. We experienced that both at Costa Mesa and in Newport Harbor. I mean, endless. They didn't have a stadium or buildings to be in for almost 5 years based on what we were dealing with. And the community did, in fact, vote against facilities on the bonds. We put it out there. They did not want it, nor did they want air conditioning or a teacher center. Those were the 3 top things that they didn't want. And so I think by being prudent, in our budgeting, and our staff has, done an amazing job, doing that. I think this was just, an error in severe judgment because we all asked the question on this dais when we were starting it, how soon, how soon? And when we did ask when it was going to be emptied, or how long, I assume this board member, most of us will be in agreement that the pool wouldn't have been emptied. Why would you do that? Because it's going to be in a different area. There was absolutely, so we were really surprised ourselves. And so I'm going to vote for the replacement, bringing it back to life. But I also want to encourage, I don't even know how to put this in a nice way. We need to, it's not just transparency. We need to come to the board. I mean, this study session with the ARC pack and Cummings, I've learned more in my 20 years from Mr. Cummings. Matter of fact, I feel like I could go build a pool.
I don't think so.
In my backyard, but this is, and I'm not saying our staff is, right, wrong, or indifferent at this point, because I've never seen this, and this is just amazing. Now, the cost of this, I'm sure, we can't do for every job, but we need to learn from this, because this is really an amazing education, and we're in the business of education. Maybe put our students together and have them work on, with the company to teach them this, because we're going to have to, do this in the future. It just is going to be that. So I'm going to support the motion, Mrs. Floor. As far as the other, I'd like to place a motion that we do look at.
We're not ready to do that one yet.
Vote on one motion first.
We can't wait for the other one?
Can-
Well, I want to
I'd
put.
rather wait because then we want to talk about
Okay.
the other one.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Metoyer.
I wanted to agree, sounds wrong, well, we want to agree. I too was upset, that's why I said, we need this. And I'll kind of disagree with Mrs. Black in that, yeah, this might have been expensive, but I'd rather spend a little bit of money up front so we do what we do right instead of having to fix what we did wrong, get everybody upset, us included, and look like we don't know what we're doing. And
We do know.
this just makes sense. So if this is what we have to do, then this gets part of the budget, and we plan to do, so we have all the information up front. Thank you.
I do believe that, that people in your department, were trying to do a good thing. I believe that draining the pool, they were trying to, it wasn't the smartest thing to do. It wasn't authorized to do, but I believe in their hearts, they thought they were making the project go faster. And, and that's kind of what happened with the polls. It was the same type of thing. They were trying to meet a need and didn't get authorization from the board to do it the way it was done. And so this has to stop, and I know it will stop, because we need to know what's going on, and we can't call the department every day, okay, what have you done today? We need to rebuild that confidence, not only with the community, but with the board. But I do know that people in that department work hard, And they want the best for this district. They're not just willy-nilly doing things. They have a reason, they have their own reasons why they do things, and it's to fix what they perceive as a problem. So as we move forward, I think this has taught us a lesson, and I don't think anything like this will happen again.
I just want to put out there, since it was asked, you're absolutely right. This is a personnel issue, and we know that this will be confidential. So I want the public to know they will never know the outcome of our discussions with any individuals regarding this issue, because the integrity of our HR processes are based on confidentiality and maintaining the privacy rights of our employees. So everybody wants to know everything. This is not an area that we can share this information. But we also, and one of the speakers said it best, you can't always be learning the same lesson over. So we want to make sure we learn this lesson right this time, and that everybody's skills grow and improve and they develop in their jobs. So that's the goal of this.
Okay, so we're going to vote on the first.
I have one more thing to say.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Also, I'd like to share, because I think the public needs to know, when we say personnel, we're not saying names, but that doesn't prohibit us from talking about setting a standard in a, especially a department. And one of the representatives from AXA or CSEA is saying, they know that we have rules, really strict rules. And so when we find out, when we're, notified that things aren't doing, it is our responsibility. It totally is our responsibility that those things are done properly in a safe manner. So yes, we're not going to tell you who the person is, because that's they're protected from the public, from naming. And, well, they are protected. Right. Bottom line, I've been doing this forever. Teachers, any personnel, students. So, basically, I think that we have to make a commitment here at the board, and we have. We've talked about this for the last couple of weeks, that we really need to go into the division and change what's happening. Obviously, it's different. This isn't the first time that we're getting surprised, like Mrs. Floor said. So, but we should report out to the public that we have, in fact, looked at the processes. And so you have a commitment on that I'm going to dog, and the superintendent knows that we will have a report. How are we changing that? How are we going to be not just transparent, because, that's a lot of gobbledygook that everybody throws around. What is the actual in writing process for the future? For future boards and, and for the public. We need access and so.
Future projects, yeah.
Which you have been asking for 3 years.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, because
I wanted a flow chart,
You want a flow chart. When this gets proposed, it goes to this, and then it goes to this, so. Yep.
Okay, so we ready to vote on the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mrs. Floor regarding refilling the pool as quickly as possible, and seconded.
I second it.
By Ms. Batoye. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Now. So 2 months. We heard
We
2
heard 2
months.
I heard 2 months.
Is it a month? Could it be 6? I mean, what's the next step for that?
Yes, so Mr. Marsh can address a little bit of this, but he has been talking to some of the vendors that would be required to do this in order to get us that estimate of 2 months. It's possible we may be able to be in as little as 6 weeks, but
Don't want to promise, yeah.
That's right. He is still talking.
Under promise, over deliver.
He is still talking with vendors and looking at what work could be performed with our own staff while still maintaining our staff's commitment to all of our existing operations and schools. So, he's still working out the details of it. We believe that 2 months is something you can hold us accountable to, that we will have students back in the water within 2 months from your decision, which was today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, because we're going to be dogging this one.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and I think there'll be a lot of people.
So could we have an update on our next agenda, so that we can continue this, can you just make sure that you provide us an update?
We can make it part of Mr. Holcomb's informal
Please.
report.
Thank
Please.
you.
Yes, absolutely.
Just keep us,
Okay.
keep us apprised of the process.
Which
Where-
keeps the
where
public apprised.
Where the status is.
Okay, so that now moving on to
The second issue, which
the
is.
second issue, which is how to proceed with different options for the new aquatic center. We have Ms. Metoyer.
Mr. Holcomb,
Yes, ma'am.
could you please, 20 words or less, and I won't count, tell me the differences between option A, option B, and option C, so that I can refer to it as, I like this one, not that one,
And the original.
and the original. I know you did a 15-minute
Sure.
report on it, but just,
I am
because I'm just looking at that
Page
one.
5.
Looking for my copy, and I will take Mr. Trader's. Thank you, Mr. Trader. When you look at, starting from the left, the one that says original estimate 12/16/17, what that is the design that was designed by the architect that has been DSA approved to build the pool, the enclosure, which includes a certain type of wall around the enclosure, includes a restroom building, all of those sorts of things. It includes that.
It includes all of this.
It includes all of that.
Okay.
Well, not all of that. It does not include,
Up to the,
as you see,
The shades.
yeah, shade structure is down below.
that's right. It does include all of that. And in fact, know that, as I say, back to the 20 words or less, as succinctly as I can. It is the original design that was bid in September, but it also includes additional things that were not in that bid in September. And that includes, for example, converting the existing locker room so that we could fit a team room in it.
Okay.
So what the consultant, Mr. Campbell, did was we gave him the scoping document for everything we wanted to achieve equity. He said, okay, I'm putting together a price for if you award the contract, how much should it cost? But you also have to do some other things. And it's, as you can see, it's not the most efficient way, cost-wise, to get all of the things that we want. Okay, does option A make sense?
And in option A, just one quick thing, is that a
I mean,
Mirtha pool? I mean, not option A, in the
No,
original design, is that a
Yes.
Mirtha pool?
That is a Mirtha pool, that's correct.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so, in option A, B, and C, the coach's room, team room, restrooms, and snack bar are not included?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
So-
that was on my
So-
paper,
so
that's
then-
what confused
So
me.
then let me go
Yeah.
on to option A. Option A then assumes that we would do the entire scope of all of what's equitable now with a new design.
That's the
Okay?
adjusted design.
So it says, ignore those little titles across the
Okay.
top. You'll get confused on the design, build, and everything else. So just let me help with this.
Thank you.
Option A is to, instead of building that separate room the way it was designed by the building, as it was designed by the architect, to achieve the cost benefits of, we got a better idea. And in
that's
the
good.
architect's defense, we hadn't given them the option to remodel the locker rooms. We brought this to you a couple of meetings ago to set a standard for showers so that we
I see.
could potentially do this to save this money. You remember that?
Got it.
So this assumes that instead of building that new building, that we would repurpose the existing locker room, but we would start from scratch. We would move the pool closer to the existing buildings. We would reuse those rooms in a way, but we would do all of that. We would fill the existing pool, make it a place where they can have lunch, and we would provide the team room, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So
Yeah.
of the things that you are talking about, this is really what you're talking about as an approach to do. Now, if you talk about that, one of the things we'll want to talk about, you would want to ask me is, do we do this design build or do we do this design bid build potentially, and when does that give us cost certainty and da-da-da-da-da. Option B is we build the pool and the things we really, really need based on a new design, but we save some of the things until later. So we do the minimal amount we could do in the locker rooms and those sorts of things. We save some of those components, like the team room. Is that correct, Mr. Campbell, in option B? We save the team room for later. Is in phase 2, which would be sometime later, okay?
Yeah.
Option C was Mr. Campbell looking and saying, okay, could you get your pool for the budget you have now? In other words, if the board says there is no more money, can we do something? And the answer, he says, is if we take the existing design, we get rid of the building, we redo things, but we basically kind of, shoehorn it in, and we only do the pool. We don't do the team room and everything else. We do the minimal amount of refurbishment possible to open a 50-meter pool at the school. That's what option C represents. So let me, in 20 words or less, summarize each one of them real quickly.
Didn't mean to limit you quite so much.
Yeah, original estimate is what we had designed, plus refurbishing things not efficient. Option A is, let's think this project over from scratch, let's do the whole thing now, let's do it the most efficient way that we possibly can. Option B is, let's rethink this whole thing, but we don't have enough money to do it all right now, so we'll save some things like the team room for later. Option C is, we don't have any more money, how can we get a 50-meter pool in operation as quickly as we possibly can for the money we have?
Can I ask a clarifying question about that?
Sure.
Oops.
It's not my job to say.
And I'm going to look to Mr. Campbell, since this is his report, and just make sure that what I said is correct.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is in the original one, it wasn't enough to do with we just had to do
Oh.
it was just scoping documents. We didn't go into the original design and go into any detail. We just took those 4 pages and developed everything that was in there.
Okay. Mrs. Fleur?
Yes, so I have 3 questions, but the first one is, just to clarify, none of these these are all generic in terms of, you're not separating out design, bid, build, design, build. This is just
What
the scope.
yes, what I just talked about was scope, that's right. There
Just
are
the
2
scope.
different ways to
Right.
get
Just
to
two
all of
different
those
ways to
scopes,
get it,
that's
and that
right.
hasn't been that is not part of this
It
page
is,
5.
it is part of the cost, but the significance of the difference between those two is a perfectly efficient design build and a perfectly efficient design bid build should cost the same thing. It's not like design build costs you less inherently. The presumption that Mr. Campbell has is that that an architect as well is going to design it as efficiently as they possibly can. So there is not a cost savings by doing it one way or the other.
Okay.
She had 3
I have
questions.
one more question. My further question is, because my preference is to do all of it, okay? So my question is in terms of, based on the information that you provided in terms of financing. The intent is, can we finance portion of it? Yes, we have competing projects. And this is, originally we said there was going to be about 7 million. Now we're looking at
10.
8, between 8 and, I'm not sure exactly which one of these numbers I should be looking at, to be real honest.
So
I'm looking at maybe 8.4, maybe, the one if it's,
That's
if A.
correct. That's
So-
correct. Generally, what you have been talking about, I've heard you all talking about, would be about the 8.4, 8.5 million would be a nice round number for a budget for us to set to build the whole thing now.
Okay. So,
Without shade structures.
And that's
without the
including
shade
soft costs on the.
Yes, that does include soft costs.
Oh, really?
so my question is there?
So you would need to, pardon me, Mrs. Fleur, you would need to increase your existing commitment that you've made, which is $7 million, by $1.5 million to do option A.
So, given the fact that we have a AAA bond rating, so our borrowing costs are less, would it be in your recommendation to finance all or portion of that Is that one, is that something that?
Yeah, going back to my slide about the less than 10 years, in the less than 10 years, it really doesn't matter. And that's why we're saying to you that while we may need to finance, that it's going to end up being a moot point because inflation, the cost of money and the cost of construction are
Right.
both rising at the same rate.
Okay. And well, I'll save my other question.
Okay.
I mean, I do have a question about the maintenance of a Mirtha pool versus what, are those costs, have you costed that out, the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance?
It costs a few $100 million, a few $100,000 every time you replaster a pool. Typically, and Mr. Moeller is an expert in this, typically you would do that at about 10 years, which is where we are with the current Estancia High School pool. Now, Mirtha pools have been around for a few decades, and most of the experience has been that those linings last 20 years or 20 years plus. So ostensibly, in a life cycle cost analysis, a Mirtha pool does save that intermediate replastering cost.
Okay, Mrs. Black.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask Dr. Navarro, you know, because going back to what Mrs. Floor said about our AAA rating, a lot of that has to do with the fact that we're debt-free, and we worked hard at doing that and budgeting. So my question is probably more for Mr. Trader. Would this be a place where we could use a COP and, you know, because it's a, you know,
Define COP.
individual or?
Well, I think what we would ask Mr. Trader to do is give you an analysis of several ways to finance
think
this.
that this would be.
Because you would probably, you know, I think Mr. Holcomb's answered the question. It's not going to cost you any more in the long run.
Well, and that's how, I
Yeah.
mean, we talked
Okay,
about
so
this
it's
when the
not-
initial project came up, that this would be a good way to leverage that. Because we have, you know, I mean, I'm gonna go on record and say, I'm not into the nickel and dime mode because it's so
know
much
that too
more
frequently.
costly than it, you know, and we actually experienced that early on in Measure A. So.
Well, and it's the same strategy you use with the enclaves.
That's right. It's exactly, so I'm gonna be in favor of that.
May I try to help with that a little bit as well? Mr. Trader and I have talked about all of the different options, and
Right.
the summary that you've just heard is correct.
Right.
You have the option either way within the next 10 years. So the bigger issue to think about is we have committed to a very clear schedule for air conditioning projects. They're very expensive. The state of California owes us over $20 million from our modernization projects that we have not received. We're hoping that will come sooner than later. There have been machinations in Sacramento that have delayed that a bit and are delaying that now.
Right.
We will meet your schedule for air conditioning projects. If we have to do short-term financing to meet your schedule for the air conditioning projects so that we meet your commitment, that's what we will do. This would just go in the same pot.
Got it.
So the question is, on any given day next year when we go to award contracts, have we received all of what we are counting on to pay for these projects at that moment, or do we have to do some short-term financing while we wait for those funds to
And
come?
I
Does that make
definitely
sense?
would need, have a briefing with, Mr. Trader, because, I really want to understand, I know we can, whenever you go into borrowing money, it's yay, yippee skippy, but I want to see what the long-term effects are, because, we had huge debt, when I was first on the board. It was,
Well,
it took us
fortunately-
about 8 years to get out of it.
Fortunately, unlike most districts, you don't need to borrow to cover your payroll.
That's right.
In the first part of the year.
Right.
So, that is a huge advantage in this,
Well,
in
that's
this
one of the
situation.
things that's
So-
important to this entire board.
But again, you'd want to know, just like Mr. Holcomb presented you all the options today,
Right.
you would want to know all your financing options as well.
Okay, Mrs. Yelsey.
Oh, yeah, well, before he answered that, I too would like to do it all at once, because I think there's a lot of ramifications of spreading it out. But my question was going to be, and you kind of answered this, you know, we're always told we can do whatever we want. We just have to take something else away.
Yes to
that's what
this,
we're
no
doing.
to that.
So I just wanted to know if you, Mr. Holcomb, and Mr. Trader feel comfortable if we were to do the entire thing at this point, and it would be $1 million, $1.4 million over what we had projected, if you feel comfortable with us doing that.
The answer is yes. We do feel comfortable. We talked at significant length, and I'd be happy to have Mr. Trader talk about that. The best way to describe it is back to that slide where we said we're getting tight. So the issue with that is in the short term, you know, I know we will get $20 million from the state. We know we will get it. It's a question of when we will get the $20 million
Whether you're
from
still
the state.
alive, I'm still alive.
Yeah, and so you have commitments for things like air conditioning that we're absolutely expecting that money from the state is going to pay for that. It won't have to be general fund monies or anything else that meets that commitment. But the question of when it comes may mean short-term financing. But what happens in personal lives is sometimes people get hooked on that and they start spending that, oh, I'm going to get a tax refund, and then I'm going to get my uncle's, and then I'm going to get, and they spend it all before they get it, and then you realize that you actually overestimated how much you were going to get.
This board doesn't do that, just so you know.
And we are not at that place. We are at the place where what we really think we will have available for projects, you have committed, but you have committed 100%-ish of it, and we might at some point in the future either have to talk to you about financing or taking one of those commitments off the table, and we know you don't want to do that. So let's not make a whole lot more commitments of this size.
Yeah.
Okay, Ms. Matoya.
On the original estimates or the estimates for the 50-meter pool, as stated on page 5 of the project, the difference in cost between Murtha on option C and option A, not the difference in the cost of, is approximately $40,000.
That's correct.
$35,000-ish.
That's correct.
So if, and because option C does not include other areas and spaces,
Correct.
okay, if the Murtha pool was done and all the other instead of
Yes.
option A and everything else is on there, it would increase that by
I
40,000?
follow where
You
you're
know what I'm
going.
saying?
The answer is yes, and then there's
Because then that becomes a D, and I don't want to have a D.
There's the but. The answer, so it's not actually even a but. So at this level, $40,000 is immaterial.
Thank you.
Right? So the question is, can I get option A with a Murtha instead
Yes.
of a Shotcrete pool?
That
And
was
the
my
an-
question.
And the answer is yes.
Well, of
And
course.
now here's my but.
But it'll
My
cost
but
$40,000
is that we have just reduced our potential for accuracy and confidence for sure, because what we see in the marketplace is that Murtha pools are costing the same. But the more that we limit our options in the pool, the more that we have the potential, as you mentioned, Ms. Fleur, lighting systems are another thing. You have the potential to end up with a smaller pool of bidders, and when you end up with a smaller pool of bidders, the natural economics, they tend to increase their profits. So one option you would have to address that would be to, instead of doing a design bid build of a Murtha, because nobody could bid a shotcrete pool when we did this design bid build hard design for a Murtha pool. That wasn't one of their options. If you were to choose design build, which is a new thing for us, if you were to choose that, what you could do is you could allow both types of pool vendors to propose a pool, and then Murtha pools are actually competing against shotcrete pools.
Got it.
Now, another but, the pools are not necessarily the most commonly designed build options. Are there lots of people who would come to our design build option party for a pool? We believe so. Pool's a relatively simple thing. The designs are used fairly regularly, but it's it is something that we would need to work with if Mr. Moeller designs pools, if we work with Mr. Moeller to help us to market the pool, Mr. Moeller can't participate as a potential pool designer, which we've been very careful.
Yeah, exactly. So he doesn't want to do that,
We
yeah.
have been very careful so far to make sure that we have not involved Mr. Moeller in this process in such a way that he would have a competitive advantage should he choose to participate in a design-build team in the future that would say, have we got a pool for you, right?
Got it.
So you could talk with him about generally options, know that he could potentially be a future, but he is very knowledgeable of this industry. I would suggest you probably talk to Mr. Campbell first and get his sense of, kind of design build, design bid build, what our options on that are. I hope I answered your question.
You did, but
put you
it was
the
in
right
a
direction.
circuitous
I'm
manner
sorry,
that
that's
I
my
will come
fault.
back to saying, then what we can do as a board is approve, well, I've got another one on that too, approve option A with this asterisk saying, but we want to have the best kind of pool that we can get
For the money.
for the money, and I'd rather up our, I know this has never ever happened, I'd rather have a little bit more money in our original approval and maybe not spend it all, ha ha ha. But I don't want us to not have a Mirtha pool if we could have had one, because that would save the district long run, and it would save the Estancia pool program another extra 10 years of never having to go down while we reshot the pool over the summer. And we would learn from that and say, hey, now when we redo it, we could do it better. But I don't necessarily want to be the guinea pig either. So my other question is, if we think a shade structure is important, then we should probably include it now, just so that we get everything all at once.
I understand
So I'm
that
just upping that
perspective.
bill.
So giving you options for what to direct us. One option would be, you could say, we're very interested in option A. We would like you to take for our next meeting soon, to come back and tell us that you have tested the market for design build, and are you confident that there would be people who would come to a design build party and compete Mirtha pools versus Shot Creek pools? Can we really get the most?
Is that a reality?
Can we really get the most for that option? Mr. Campbell has been asked that question. We believe it's true, but we could take the time to give you some more certainty rather than just deciding today to tell us we want you to design, bid, build a Mirtha pool. We've decided it's off the table, or to for sure go with design build. I understand the reason why you might want to postpone that.
So move.
I have a concern about the Mirtha pool, and I have concern about the design build. I just don't want anything else to go wrong. I just want this pool to be designed and built and started within the year, so that's my concern, since we haven't done this this design build before. We've only done the design bid build. That just seems more comfortable to me, that we just go with that, and we go with the Shot Creek pool, because that's what everybody has, and I'm sure the Mirtha pool is superior, but again, one of the things you mentioned earlier in your presentation is there's not as many people that install them. And so we're right back to where we started in limiting our bidders unless we go with this alternate bid process, which you guys haven't done before, and I'm a little concerned about it. So I also have a question about doing the whole project. Does that mean that there would be a pool, there would be that small building with the snack bar, and bathrooms, and then there would be a team room in the redesigned locker room?
What you just described is the original estimate, and that is the most expensive thing. So what we are talking about here is that if you just did the pool, that would be more like an option B, where we do the pool. We refurb the bathrooms and we do some of the things, but we don't refurb far enough to go into the locker rooms to create a team room, et cetera, et cetera.
So none of the, option A isn't a team, doesn't do a team room?
Option
None of
A
these options.
does the team room right now, so I was understanding.
Yeah,
you
that's
to
what I
be-
mean.
Option A does it all now.
Right now.
That's the
But now I
everything.
want to know what it all is right now. It's
6.4.
it's redoing
I know, it's,
the locker room
Right,
with a team room.
right.
It's the pool, and it's that building that was in the original plan.
No.
Oh, so there's no
Option A
building.
does not have that building. That's where we achieved cost savings.
You refurbish.
Only the original estimate includes that brand-new building.
Okay, so I thought you had to put a
Are there
bathroom.
team rooms in
We-
here?
I thought you had to have.
We have to have bathrooms available, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a brand-new building. And in fact, having it adjacent in existing space is a whole lot cheaper way to do that, which is what this shows, is
And
in these other options.
Adjacent space is,
Is right adjacent at the existing locker rooms and equipment room, right?
and there, the access would change so that they
but
could
the
get it from the
public
pool.
can't go
Correct.
into the locker rooms. Yes. Yeah, they do.
If I could,
Oh.
Yes.
Good.
one of the points I don't think is being clearly explained is that the options call for eliminating the buildings and eliminating the wall, getting rid of the original desire to keep the pizza road. So what you would end up having is, the 50-meter pool, a bigger pool deck, and only 3 walls. That would allow student athletes to access the existing team room that would be refurbished, the existing bathrooms which would be refurbished. So what you're going to be
okay.
doing with the options is 50-meter pool, 3 walls, big pool deck, and refurbish the existing gym, the locker room area, the existing team room, and the existing coaching office. That's where the cost saving comes from. It also gives what I believe our team wants, which is bigger pool deck and access directly to the existing facilities. As far as the public use of the restrooms, the public, for when we do summer swim programs and whatnot, they would not be allowed access into the gym, but would have access into the bathroom in the little gym,
Oh,
which is right
So
next
that
door.
would
And
work.
there's
So-
no snack bar.
What
Would there
the
be-
options then would allow for, if a designer felt it appropriate, would be to look at, Estancia, if I could, quick pause. Estancia is in a unique position as far as high schools go in Southern California, in that we actually are blessed with a lot of space.
yeah.
Again, we were built for about 2,200 students. We have about 1,200 now. So there's a lot of space underutilized inside the existing gym, the existing locker room footprint. And so this process would allow for the potential of some of the existing space, like the old towel issue point that hasn't been used in maybe 30 years, to be redesigned into something like a snack bar.
So, okay.
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay, that's what I was trying to get to. Okay.
I know we're running late on time. One of the things that I know you have been very concerned about recently is the involvement of the school site and the people that are impacted. So I'm sorry we didn't get to that earlier, but you have heard from Mr. Hall that he understands what we've been talking about. He's been involved in our discussions. Please do ask him questions if you have questions about their involvement and his understanding of what this is and what his beliefs are and his recommendations about what's good for the school.
What's your recommendation?
What a concept.
Well, thank you. I appreciate, and I also appreciate the discussion and the action on step one. I think refilling the pool will provide immediate relief to our student athletes, and also take a positive step in rebuilding some of the trust that was regrettably harmed during some of the missteps along the way. I wish, I'm see Annie's still with us. I also, before I answer your question, I wanted to thank Annie for the student leadership that she's presented throughout this difficult time. Herself and other senior leaders have done a phenomenal job, keeping our program moving forward. Her advocacy for the program, her online petition, were all been done in a very positive way. At no point has her or any other student athlete on the team really, while they've been in a terrible position, they've kept a positive attitude, and I really appreciate her senior leadership, and I'm excited by the fact that with good timing and your action, we should be able to have her and her seniors back in for their senior season for swim.
Good job, Amy.
Okay, what's your
As far as
recommendation?
the three options that I like, I'm going to be honest with you. I think that eliminating that pizza road, that was part of the original concept, and getting rid of the buildings, and giving us 50-meter pool, big pool deck, and refurbishing existing facilities puts our school in a very good position.
Okay.
Getting it all done at once, I also think would go over very well for our community and would take another positive step toward rebuilding some of that frayed trust. So I like the idea that we refurbish, we get the bigger pool deck, we have direct access, and we can get it all done at one time. That's what I believe most of our community would appreciate.
Are you calling it a pizza road?
Yes, I'm sorry.
No, I just was interested.
Yeah.
The original design that had 4 walls, and there was maintaining a vehicle access into the quad area. That vehicle access is used to deliver pizzas on Wednesday.
Oh, that's why. Yeah, I knew the road. I was just like.
Getting rid of that road, that vehicle passway, gives us a bigger pool deck. It gives our student athletes direct access to the pool, and it allows for the flexibility of these options.
And you can still get into the quad going around the other way. Yeah.
Vehicles can't.
Yeah, vehicles, I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, a few more questions. Thank you very much. Ms. Yelsey.
Well, I just also have a question about, are we also deciding today whether we do design build or design bid build?
What I understood your discussion a moment to be, one of your fellow members said, maybe we come back at a subsequent meeting. That's a choice for you all to direct us as to how you want
Okay,
to
because,
do that.
yeah, I too have issues with the design build. You put it in the terms, I don't want to end up with a plastic dais. No, and that's
resonates with you.
No, if we start, unless we know specifically every single thing we want up front from what you're saying, we could end up with something. Well, you didn't tell us, so this is what we put in. So I would have concerns with that.
Mrs. Fleur.
Well, I'm going back to years ago when, part of the thing is the process. I personally would favor a design build. That's my process. However, I believe that when we did Measure A, the board was very involved in the selection of the architects. In other words, there was a committee that was established to interview. They made their presentations, and at that time, there were 10 people that did it, we selected 5, so that because we had so many schools. I believe that that's the same process that we should be looking at in terms of a design build, that it should include, if whatever process we're doing, that the board, members of the Estancia, community are involved as well as staff in terms of looking at the designs, looking at to make sure either if we go to a design build, or what exactly is the scope that we want to look at, as well as interviewing and listening to their presentations, so that the community as well as this board are always on top of it and see it. And so that's just a process that would allow for the board to have a little bit more, there were 2 members of the board that sat on that committee as well as staff, and a couple of people from at the time, it was the citizen,
Oversight.
the oversight committee. And I think that that's a process that we should be looking at, regardless of whether we go to design build or design bid build. The community, and I'm not saying it needs to be Estancia, Estancia, the school site, they need to see the presentations and have a conversation about that. And whether it's, and have that conversation in terms of what's the best option to do. I mean, I'm just really concerned that we'll end up with whatever, and then, it's like, you could have asked me about the architect who did this, the original design, and I would have
Madam
told you.
President?
Yeah. So anyway, that's my
May I
question.
please make a comment?
Comment session's over.
Because I would just like to say that our coach did not find out about this meeting until Tuesday at noon. And so I would like to agree with Member Fleur that we need to be informed. I don't know how that happened, but I was very disgusted by that. So
Okay, thank you.
please.
Thank you.
So I don't care what the process is, I just think that, bottom line is, are we looking at, if we take Char's recommendation of including the shade structure, it runs up to 8.75. So you want to go, and whatever that is.
And before we approve $9 million.
Before we approve $9 million, we
to
need
make
to.
8 points.
Okay, we have some more speakers. And I just want to comment that I'm all for including people. I just don't want this to go on for 3 years like Corona Del Mar's field. I want it,
very specific,
when
though.
this year is up, we better be digging. Miss Black.
No, I was going to say, going back to Measure A, and we were very entrenched in that, and we had individual school sites and an oversight committee. But our principals were very much involved, and they were having weekly, sometimes weekly, so much was going on. But we also hired a professional with McCarthy for the guidance, because our staff, that's burdening our staff. When we say up here, we're not the, professionals, we're also asking our staff to be the professionals, in doing all these different designs and builds and stuff, and that's not fair. So I think that when we go out to the community, and say, this is, what do you want? I think that from that point on, we need to go to the professional afterwards and ask, because this is what we're learning. Hindsight's 20/20, and, that's it. I think we should hire Mr. Cummings on for full-time staff.
Then he can't
Until we
bid.
finish
Right,
all
then he
this
can't.
work.
Miss Matoye.
Mrs. Black, you led right into what I wanted to say. Part of the reason why we want to, as a board, we want to get involved, we want to have this committee and have a board member on it. We'd like to have the committee to have, because of the faith that we have lost, because of our trust, where we were told this, and then we find out that. We often hear that there's staff involvement, and staff doesn't feel like they were involved. And it's the process, because staff doesn't talk to us. Staff talks to the principal, and then the principal talks to you, and then it comes back to us. But then if the staff didn't get to talk to us, they think they didn't get to talk. That whole process needs to be tidied up, or at least made very clear to everyone so they understand. We put tons of faith in McCarthy, and McCarthy is the one who oversight the whole first part of the bid. I have no faith in that process right now.
McCarthy didn't do this.
McCarthy is our owner rep. So somehow they had oversight on the original bidding process. Or why are we having them if we're not going to be asking them these questions? So I don't know if that's going on right now either. So what I'm trying to say is, the reason the board wants to get really involved again is because we feel like, oh my gosh, we let you go to the mall on your own and you bought too much stuff and got in trouble. So now we're going to be paying attention and we're going to maybe give you a timeline, and you better have that phone and call us every 15 minutes. So that's where we're at. And it's no one person's fingertip, because we get comfortable. We all get comfortable in the processes we've always done, and that's what happens. So now we're tightening it back up again. I'm done. Maybe.
Okay, so I'm hearing that, am I hearing that you want to form a committee?
No.
No? Am I hearing, what am I hearing?
Okay, I would like to make a motion.
I believe that we want staff to direct staff to come back with three things. One,
We want to do it all at once.
clearly, we want to do everything all at once. That's one. And then two is to come up with either the concept of a design build or a concept of bid design, and which is most expedient and which do we get the best buck. Three, that's number one. Three would be financing options to do that. And four is a process in terms of how the selection of the architect, the whatever.
Contractor,
The
yeah.
contractor, the architect is done. That's a process that can take because you're not gonna be doing it right.
But if we're filling the pool, then it gives us a little time.
So we're not ready to make a motion on going forward with the project completely?
Well, I'm comfortable making a motion, but I don't think we have all, I guess we can make a motion that says,
We wanna do it
we
all.
want to move to do option A, well, I guess it's option A with a
Asterisk.
maximum amount of 8.75. There you go. Does that give you
Go to
enough?
9 and you might be safer.
Yeah, that's what I
I
said.
think you should go to 9.
I think you should go to 9.
Okay, so go to 9,
Sorry.
so go to 9 million, with a project not to exceed $9 million.
Yeah.
With the understanding that that will include visiting all pool options.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay, I can
Second.
And then,
You may second.
I don't think we need to put a limit on it. I think we need
A
to.
money limit?
No, I don't think we need to at this point. You're investigating. I think when we come back, I think we need to understand what the costs are gonna be.
well, I
If
think
you-
we have the cost right here.
I think you have it. I think you have upped the amount, and you have contingencies within that. If we have to come back and increase that amount, that's one thing. But you need to have I believe, as Mrs. Flores said, you need to have a threshold, here's as high as we think we can go at this point.
Which would be
So it really just goes back to what you've done all along, is that's setting scope. So just set the scope right now.
Yep.
Right.
And then staff will come back. And I'll dip into Mrs. Black's area of expertise. It's like buying a home, right? You come out with what you think you're going to spend, and then you find something you really love. And what do?
Yeah.
You figure out a way to spend more.
Exactly.
So give us a scope,
Option A.
and we'll come back
All the way
with,
down to the bottom.
with the way to, with how,
Option
how
And I
best to
second it.
finance it and how best to construct it.
Right, yeah. Option A.
Okay, so the motion is that we're agreeing to, you want to restate your motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve option A.
And I seconded
Including the
it.
shade structure, including the shade structure.
Easy for you.
For, and you want to put
I'm not even
a
putting,
top?
I'm not putting an amount. I'm just gonna do exactly what it
come
says.
back.
We'll take
Option
the
A.
amount,
There's the
please,
scope.
out of
I'm
it.
just setting the scope.
Okay,
Option A.
okay, do we have a second?
Second.
I did.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now, the next step is the requests. So we want you to come back with the ways to finance this, to pay for this, the process for going forward, maybe some kind of a timeline, so so we're ready to
Well, you
hit the
can't-
ground running at a certain, when this
it-
other pool flakes out. And what
If
else?
it-
And,
I would like to,
oh, go ahead.
I would like to have it considered how long the original pool can stay functioning so it's least disruptive to the kids in the program when everything finally starts. So I know we said it was gonna be a year, but I don't want us to sit there and say, oh, well, you know what, it's not gonna get started for another 6 months. Oops, you can't use the pool because we only told you a year. So we don't wanna go there, so make sure that we're okay. Short
Yeah.
of having to read.
I mean, obviously, it'd be great to be able to start,
I mean,
well, I mean, that would be talking to the principal and the coaches, the
Right.
best time to start, whether it's the beginning of the summer or
And how
Christmas
long it-
break or whatever.
And how long it's going to take to go back through DSA?
Yes.
That's an unknown always as to the length of time.
better now.
Okay, does anybody have
So do we
anything
know
else
what
to say?
time,
Yeah, go
do
ahead.
we know when you're comfortable bringing this back, the information back to the board?
That's what I was gonna say, maybe.
For is it okay to say by the first meeting in February? Is that too long? Is that too short a period of time?
Well, I'm of course conservative, so there's no such thing as too long. But no.
What's
I
comfortable?
I don't know exactly when the first meeting in February is, but that sounds like about a month from now.
Yes.
And yes, about a month from now sounds
Perfect.
like a reasonable time for
Okay.
us to get things.
And you can let us know if
pulled
that's not,
together.
but, you know, if it could come back at for the first meeting in February, that would be great.
That would be great. Anybody else have anything, any comment to make before we close this meeting?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the hard work. Thank you for attending, gentlemen. I thank all the parents and student, Annie, is it Annie?
Annie.
For attending. Hi.
Remember, we're bringing in a closed session.
And we're going into closed session.
Do I
Thank
need to
you.
read this?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think we have any cards.
For close.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.